The program came about after Jill Erikson, head of references and adult services at Falmouth Public Library, began fielding questions from the community in how to spot a fake news story versus a real news story. Erikson states fake news is not a new idea at all.
We try to find accurate information for people.
Erikson introduced the guest speakers, Allison Butler, Director of Media Literacy, Certificate Program at UMass Amherst, and Sean Corcoran, News Director and Senior Reporter for WCAI Radio and Managing Editor for WGBH Radio, who gave a brief talk before opening up the session to the audience.
What we're trying to do is really sort of trace the ladder of what we see, read, or hear up through its ownership and its distribution, and how we can better understand that, right? For us in this room, for us in the United States, we have the biggest private media companies in the world. 90% of our media comes to us from 6 companies, and we in the United States produce and export around the globe the more media than anybody else on the planet. What do we do about that? How do we make sense of that? So that's where I'm coming from, and for us it's kind of a continuous process of asking questions.
The phrase fake news isn't a great one. It doesn't really convey exactly what we're talking about. It's become very politicized, but people knew what we were talking about, so we kind of stuck with that phrase and tried to give people an idea about some of the history of journalism, some of the efforts that are made by journalists to be as accurate as possible and to be as clear as possible, as well as some of the efforts by propagandists and marketing people and PR professionals, or even foreign espionage officials, that what they're doing to undermine journalism, American journalism.
The panelists allotted a good amount of time for questions from the audience and took up a good portion of the evening.
I thought largely the people in the audience had a good understanding of journalism and appreciation for journalism. Obviously, if they were going to leave their house and spend the evening at a discussion like this, they had a strong interest. They're active people, generally, civically. I've seen them, a lot of them around, some familiar faces. So they were good questions. And even journalists, we're still trying to find our way here. One of the interesting things for me is to read other journalists talk about how and we discussed this in the presentation, about how we're in a war with an administration or something, and I just so push back against that idea. And so it was good to push back against it even in a public forum and let people know we're not at war, we just need to do our job perhaps better than we ever have.